7, 8, 9, 10.
Well, for a reason that will make a lot more sense later in this video, or if you've been on social media, it'll make a lot of sense right now. Just had to get some push-ups in. Indeed though, Dragon Age The Veilguard is out on Xbox, PC, and PlayStation, and it is a true war zone of impressions, many rallying in support, many rallying against the game. It's right there in that culture war, that divisiveness that I said that BioWare and EA could not afford, and yet it's happening. I've only had a couple of hours with the game myself, and I don't really have any strong impressions yet about it, but there are a couple things I did notice, one of which the dialogue options, very reminiscent to those like Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3 days. One of those mistakes that Bethesda made with Fallout 4, there was so much criticism with that, and I really wish BioWare actually looked at that criticism and learned from it, because having a dialogue option that says, "Are you effing kidding?" and then your character says something completely different, I absolutely hate that in role-playing games. Not many developers do that nowadays. You know, Bethesda learned from that with Starfield, and we obviously seen other massive RPGs go a different route like Baldur's Gate 3. Have the full dialogue line. I don't know why that's so hard. Obviously, modders will fix that, but if you're on Xbox or PlayStation, you have to deal with it. Now, another major aspect of the game that I really am not liking is the fact that the dark fantasy side is completely gone. And this goes in line with what BioWare developers were saying in the lead up to this game. They didn't really want to embrace this side. They want it to be belonging. They want it to be family. It truly is family friendly. It doesn't feel like a Dragon Age game. It feels closer to Marvel or Guardians of the Galaxy, that game that came a couple of years ago. And that's sickening in my opinion, because this game does feel like it has an identity crisis. But I think my biggest criticism so far with Dragon Age The Veilguard, just a couple of hours in, is that I'm extremely bored with a lot of this content. The writing isn't doing it for me. The combat just feels a little too cheesy, but we'll see how it changes. We'll see how it develops, but those are my early impressions of the game. But it does appear that even some notable games journalists feel the same way. Jason Schreier, notable games journalist of Bloomberg, notable games scooper, leaker of sorts, he said, "I actually don't like the game very much, but I do like seeing you chuds get dunked on," which, yeah, very much right there in that divisive culture war of this game, and this really summarizes the stupidity surrounding this game in many regards. But yeah, we have seen other think pieces like this coming from the gamer. Dragon Age The Veilguard was always going to be divisive. Dragon Age The Veilguard was never going to please everyone. That's an aspect I agree with. Most of this article is actually pretty a-okay. It says, Skilp was scathing in its reviews, stating that every piece of dialogue and every character interaction was constructed as if HR was sitting in the room, and so far I very much am seeing that. While its combat is unbearably repetitive and its puzzle design is borderline insulting in its simplicity, yeah, BioWare isn't the same developer it used to be, something I've been singing for a while now. And then this is where this article loses me, and it makes sense because the gamer has been, you know, pretty much an advocate for BioWare for so long. Certain crowds also have an irrational bone to pick with Dragon Age The Veilguard, believing it to be an overly woke and sensitive attempt to push DEI and AAA consumers. These are not part of the conversation, nor do they deserve to be. Which is interesting, because we've gotten to this point because of games journalists like the gamer. What we saw with Hogwarts Legacy, their disgusting campaign against that game. You can even look back to Far Cry 5, in which that game got numerous lower review scores because it was an anti-Trump. I'm not even joking, that was some of the reviews for Far Cry 5. We've gotten to this point because of games journalism, and there seems to be no accountability from these outlets, and realizing what they have done, they are why we're here at this point. And I don't care about, you know, this nonsensical, you know, they're trying to make it out to be that all the criticism surrounding this game is just this. But let's be honest, there is preaching that is happening with Dragon Age The Veilguard. We're going to get to that in a second. That's what I opened this video off with, a little mockery, I guess, of sorts. But there is preaching in the game, and that's what people do not like. They don't like forced stuff like that, especially in a fantasy game. This is supposed to be escapism to a degree, but for some reason, these outlets just love to ignore that, and they like to gaslight their audiences by concentrating on one specific criticism, which is always the extreme. And we've seen this further with this specific article coming from Aftermath. Nathan Grayson, notorious Kotaku ilk, he said, "The Dragon Age review controversy shows how much YouTube and Twitter have poisoned video game discourse." And again, back to my point, this all has started years before that. We've gotten to this point because of games journalism and the numerous incidents that happened over the years and the lack of accountability coming from these individuals, which in my opinion is fucking disgusting. No accountability coming from any of these individuals. The more you enable these people structurally and systematically, the more footing they gain until they become a default, which is definitely sounding like these individuals are pushing for a cancel campaign. And they aren't specifically talking about, actual YouTubers or, the extreme voice. They're just grouping everybody together. And they go on to say that thanks to algorithmic prioritization on sites like YouTube and Twitter, this is how a growing number of people engage with video games. And then they say plenty of normal people. What do they mean by normal people? Still manage to tune out the hour-long rants and conspiracy theories. What conspiracy theories? But at what point does this rancid flavor of brain rot go from a vocal niche to a borderline mainstream position? And what are the long-term consequences of that? And then they go on to mention that as this continues to have relevantly convenient on-ramps like searching Dragon Age on YouTube and getting pulled down this rabbit hole, do we reach a point where this is the predominant mode of conversation around games? And look, I will certainly agree with the perspective that some people, yes, the extremes in which they see any LGBT character, they go absolutely insane. I think a lot of people, especially most of you watching this video, just don't want that forced stuff, especially in a fantasy game like this. But unfortunately, we can't have that conversation because we have two sides of the coin in which you have that one extreme that, go after any and all of that inclusivity or anything with that. And then you have the other side, which is only going to group everything together in that extreme. And I guess it just shows how conversation can't happen, unfortunately. Then they say inmates taking over the asylum or whatever. Is that where we're headed? Because we've seen this in American politics. The more you enable these people structurally or systematically, the more footing they gain until they become a default. And then this article goes after Asmongold, saying that he's made a video that had 1 million views against Dragon Age. And then they go on to say it's not even given that every 13-year-old boy watching an Asmongold video is going to turn. And as someone who thinks like that, most people are relatively normal, again, that normal part. And there's a point where once people with a certain kind of hateful or twisted or conspiratorial view start to gain oxygen and start to get enabled, I guess he's grouping Asmongold in that. Interesting. Their views become increasingly bizarre to a normal person. People aren't so easily brainwashed that they'll just go along with that. I'm more optimistic than other people about this stuff, but it's more of a YouTube problem than a societal problem. Then they talk about it being also a Twitch problem, Facebook problem, and a TikTok problem. And then we get this annoying article, which is talking about, I guess, grouping all of this into a radicalization engine for boomers. All these things are radicalization engines. They all ended up at the same place, starting at different starting points and blah, blah, blah. Which is nonsensical in my opinion. But yeah, these are the think pieces that we are getting surrounding Dragon Age The Veilguard so far, and it's just not surprising at all, unfortunately. But look, the game is off to a very fine performance so far in terms of performance. We're going to get more into that as this video develops, but like I said, one of my big criticisms with the game is the fact that the dark fantasy side seems to be gone. We saw earlier this year, especially when that first debut trailer came out, and a lot of people were nervous about that. BioWare instantly, they had this reaction saying that it was just as grim as its predecessor. It's not. That was lying. And this is specifically what they said early in the demo in the trailer. You're a part of the world you've been in. Tevinter Epler tells me, which he's the narrative director. And based on some of his previous remarks, none of this is surprising. Epler indicated very early on he thinks of Dragon Age as belonging, and you see that all over this. He says, Tevinter is known for being a place of high magic. Visually, it's different. Obviously, in Origins, you're in Ferelden, which was grubby, muddy, and very visually different and distinct. That said, it's the first hour of the game, so we're only seeing the prologue. As you go deeper, you'll find that the game can be just as bloody and just as grim at Dragon Age Origins to an Inquisition. For us, it's that feeling of contrast. You get moments of higher fantasy magic coming back to the world through Solas's ritual, but also things get pretty grim and things get pretty dark in some spaces for sure, and we'll see about that. I have not seen any of that, and based on what another BioWare developer said, one of the lead developers on the next Mass Effect game, even they had some concern about, the maturity going away with Dragon Age The Veilguard, and they're trying to reassure fans that no, that's not going away with Mass Effect. It's going to stay there. Which I think that, maybe they're not saying it out loud, but I think that definitely was a reaction to the criticism with this game being a little too soft and being a little too Marvel and Disney. Now, like I said, the game is off to a decent start. We've seen many review outlets saying it's the best BioWare game since Mass Effect 3, which really isn't saying a lot, especially since BioWare has been, embroiled in so much chaos for a decade or so, and Dragon Age Inquisition had its problems. Mass Effect Andromeda was a dumpster fire, and Anthem, we don't even need to talk about Anthem. We also have amazing articles like this coming from IGN saying Dragon Age The Veilguard launch beats Jedi Survivor to make its EA's biggest ever single-player game on Steam. We also have this one from VGC saying Dragon Age The Veilguard tops the Steam charts, breaks BioWare's concurrent player record. And then PC Games N has Dragon Age The Veilguard beats Inquisition's Steam record by 500% in 1 hour, which you would think that this is a massive achievement, except for the fact there's some interesting details that are missing from this. The good news is it's smashing at the record. Just a single hour after launch has been Dragon Age The Veilguard shoot past the player peak for Inquisition by a whopping 500%. What's more, those figures are continuing to rise. At the time of writing, they're currently 733% higher than anything Dragon Age Inquisition has seen. And what's missing from this is the fact that Dragon Age Inquisition only launched on Steam in 2020, and I don't think any other BioWare games were day one on Steam. Don't take my word for that, or they weren't tracked at the very least. So yeah, this is missing that key detail, and the fact that, yeah, we have not seen BioWare releases on Steam for a very long time or at all, and Inquisition came 6 years after release. So I don't know, one of those details that I think is important for discussion, but I guess this article didn't want to bring that up for reasons. And like I said, the game is doing fine. If you go to SteamDB right now, you can see that it has peaked, I guess, maybe at 77,000 players. We'll see if that increases, but it's just fine, especially when you compare it to some of the other releases. In terms of RPGs, it's not blowing up. It's not having the success like a Cyberpunk or Baldur's Gate 3, and maybe it was never going to get that. But I guess if we're talking about this game selling millions upon millions of copies of sales, it doesn't appear that it's going to be heading that way, at least right now. And yet, there has obviously been some other games, especially the Monster Hunter Wilds beta right now is grabbing all the attention, and obviously Dragon Age The Veilguard has this whole holiday season to themselves in terms of the RPG space, especially mainstream RPGs, but there still are games that are definitely grabbing a lot more attention right now. But it is important to understand this is a $70 game versus a beta which everybody can play. But still, when you have 400,000 to 500,000 players playing this beta versus only 70,000 for Dragon Age The Veilguard, it's not surprising to see comparisons being made. But yeah, this game continues to get review bombed every and anywhere. As you can see, the official launch trailer has 34,000 dislikes, and the comment section is as you expected. Can't believe you are the company who made Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect. Here before comments get shut off, Dragon Age Concord, rip Dragon Age, do I just play Baldur's Gate 3 instead? I'm Commander Shepard, and this is not my favorite game on the Citadel. You get the point with these comments. And then even IGN's review has been continuing to get mass dislike. 58,000 dislikes is insane. This is a sales pitch, not a review. You forgot to write sponsored. And look, the overall review score for Dragon Age The Veilguard and OpenCritic remains pretty decent, but this is a game that I think takes around 30 to 40 hours to finish, so it's going to take time until we see more reviews come in, and I really won't have any expectations about this until it's well over 100 critic reviews are in. I still have the sentiment that it's probably going to lower with time, but users, as you can expect, it's not surprising as well that it has a mostly positive rating on Steam right now. These are the early reviews coming from a lot of BioWare Dragon Age fans, but 77% is decent, although I remember in the Starfield days, that was the same score it had, and then it lowered in the coming months. In the last year, I think it's at like 59%, and I do suspect that might be something that happens with this game as well. But obviously, there has been a lot of people talking about some of these reviews, in which many users are just parroting a lot of things that we saw from critics as well. A return to form for BioWare, return to form, and it's mentioned multiple times, and yeah, this just isn't the same BioWare, and I don't think that this is a exposing anything massive with these remarks. I think it's just cliched writing that many of these individuals are just parroting, especially when you see so many critic reviews saying this exact same fucking line. But it is also worth mentioning there is some crashing issues that players have been running into. This is something that has been criticized in a lot of these Steam reviews. And yeah, the review bombing effort here it is. It's on Metacritic, not Steam right now, but 3.3 out of 10 on PlayStation 5. Graphics is mediocre at best. The story is boring and half the conversation felt forced and outright unnecessary. Ugly character designs. What's the point of character customization when your choice is between ugly and ugly? Awful game. And yeah, I will say about the character customization, I absolutely find it hilarious that the sliders for your butt or breast, they don't at all work, which, you know, for a game that has so much character customization options and flaunts that as one of the biggest selling points, the fact that you can't do any of that, just rather interesting, very suspicious in my opinion. And yes, it's a battle of zeros and ones and nines and tens right now. A fantastic sequel which surpasses so far everything I had hoped for, and these reviews are hilarious because these individuals have only had a couple of hours to play this game. From bad graphics, horrible dialogue, forced DEI, doing push-ups for misgendering, etc., a game for blank. First of all, this is no longer a Dragon Age. The game doesn't have good environments and an interesting story. The game doesn't work at all. 10 out of 10. As others have noted, when Metacritic users are review bombing the game, it's unfortunate, as it's likely one of the best single-player experiences released in the last year. Gameplay is fun, graphics are great, and the game improved, fixed my frustrations with Inquisition. Nothing about story, though, I guess. You guys ruined Dragon Age with political intros and ideologies. It feels more like gender ideology indoctrination than even a game. You guys should be ashamed of yourself, ruining a Dragon Age. Jesus. And yeah, this isn't just PlayStation 5 reviews, it's also PC, which it has a 2.0 out of 10. Jesus, that's a lot worse than I actually expected. Never laughed so hard in my life. 1.5 hours of sheer laughing bliss. Then I refunded. All in all, I'd say the experience was a 12 out of 12. Thanks to all involved. And the Xbox score, same thing. So, yeah, this is the sentiment. This is the culture war stuff that I expected with Dragon Age, and it is very much happening. And it isn't just Metacritic review scores, it's also Google reviews many have gone to, 2.2 out of 5 stars. Dragon Age The Veilguard is an insult to longtime fans. And I will say that from my own perspective from playing this game, I just don't think that this is a true Dragon Age experience, especially with the tone, which feels completely lost to the identity of previous entries of this franchise. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you enjoy Dragon Age The Veilguard, that's great. Just for myself, especially what I was looking for in a Dragon Age game, it's just not here so far. But don't worry, though. Electronic Arts, though, has had a completely different take on this situation. We talked about this last video, but yeah, Electronic Arts said this was a return to what made BioWare great, except for the fact that much of that older BioWare is long gone, and this very much is a new age for the studio. And we did see an interview coming from GQ with the developers, and I thought this was interesting. BioWare's last stand is Dragon Age The Veilguard worthy of Mass Effect's legacy. I don't know why it's being compared to Mass Effect. Why not Dragon Age's legacy? After 10 long years and 2 big misses, BioWare's return with Dragon Age The Veilguard. Its creation has been messy, but its makers are confident in their comeback story. And this article goes on to mention that a community is no guarantee of positivity. Players have derided key design decisions from art to tone. The team's greatest fear is repeating history. And yeah, I will say there's a lot of Anthem in terms of writing so far within Dragon Age The Veilguard, and that makes me scared for the many hours to come. The team enlisted a group of fans nerdily named the Council to help filter the ambient static. We know what people want to see because it's the shit we want to see, said one of its members. Even then, Corinne Boucher, who's the game director, admits it's impossible to get an objective perspective, to sit down and play something the team has been working on for so long and ask, my goodness, were we wrong? And this leads into some of the preachiness that has been going viral on social media the last day or so. As this article says, this Dragon Age Veilguard cutscene where BioWare lectures the player in misgendering is just as ham-fisted and embarrassing as it sounds. And this is the specific clip. Eric Kane says there is a better, more subtle way to include a trans character in your fantasy game that does not involve a performative apology and a lecture using parlance that has no place in a game like this. This is basically self-parody. It's a shame because the game is, in my opinion, still quite fun. And for those who have not seen the clip, this is a scene within Dragon Age The Veilguard.
That snake's nose. She's still holding the ruby in her other hand. Maker's panties. I was so proud.
Oh,
Yes, she called her she instead of her pronouns, which are they/them. And yes, this is an actual dark fantasy game which is doing this. It's doing the 2024 and putting it into a game which has it does not make any sense for this to be there. Especially even the mention of something like why does that doesn't make at all any sense for it to exist in a Dragon Age game of all things.
Ah, shit. They're still holding it. Sorry.
And this is where the scene should just end. That's it. Sorry, move on. That's I don't know why this needs to be stretched. It's already cringe enough, but it goes on.
what are you doing?
Pulling a barb.
Oh, okay. A barv?
Tradition in the Lords of Fortune from one of our old members, Barv. Good guy, but like most of us, his plans went sideways a lot. Bad blood among your crew's not good for morale, but there's not always time for big drawn-out apologies. So when one of us screws up and we know we've screwed up, we do a quick 10 to put it right. Pulling a Barv.
That's so bad.
There we go.
I don't know why there's not a dialogue option saying, what the fuck was that? There should be, like...
I'm glad the Lords of Fortune have Tarsh's back.
Oh, Tarsh isn't the first non-binary member of the Lords.
This has just proven to me, especially with some of the other stuff we're going to go over, BioWare cannot write these type of characters. They do not have the talent enough to do stuff like this. And obviously I understand there's been LGBT characters in the past within these Dragon Age games. It's very much embroiled in the DNA of this franchise. But the writing talent back then could handle this stuff with nuance, and it actually worked. This, they just do not have it.
Really?
It was a little before your time, but Horlicks was one of ours.
Huh.
Oh yeah, you know, they definitely ruined this character. They definitely did.
Bastard looked better than I did in a dress or pants. And out of them too.
Any reason you can't just apologize?
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, oops, sorry, and hope that fixes it.
And this is the preachiness. This is the preachiness that gets people upset, and this is why you're going to see this controversy dragged out. And it's going to escape gaming circles, and it already has.
But they just want to get the whole thing over with.
And you just give credence to the perspective that so many have that this gaming industry is more interested in forcing agendas and preaching to audiences rather than creating entertainment. And this is the evidence people will bring up.
Trust me, I know. But pulling a Barv, you sweat a little. Makes you think about it a little more. Shows the other person you mean it.
What if they mean it when they say they're sorry, though?
And that's the other reason. Some people mess up and get all dramatic. They make it about them. Oh, you know, I didn't mean it right. I'd never do that on purpose. They feel so bad about it that it's on everyone else to smooth it over and make them feel better.
Oh, okay, yes, some people might do that.
And then they ruin this character by her playing, well, the other one that's right there. They ruin her by her playing stupid and being like a bystander. And again, it just comes off as them being preaching at the audience.
Oh, okay, yes, some people might do that.
Pulling a Barv puts it on the person who screwed up. They made the mess, they fix it, done.
Yeah, and that's just god-awful. And as I said before, the character of Tosh was not handled with any nuance and care, and that is my problem with this instance. Previous entries, they handled it much, much better. And unfortunately, though, some of gaming journalists, and especially some of the outlets that gave the game like a 9 out of 10, different perspective, as you can see here from Metro. Tosh was a romance dark horse for me that came out of nowhere, and you'll understand why if you play. Once again, BioWare's gone out of its way to embrace diverse approaches to gender, but not in a way that feels preachy or overbearing. Did we watch the same scene? Because that last one definitely was just that. And then this graphic brought up by this Twitter user, Bander, they bring up this is the same reviewer that saw fit to preach to us about J.K. Rowling's view in his Hogwarts Legacy review, saying that add to that J.K. Rowling's increasingly toxic reputation. The hypocrisy is absolutely insane with so much of gaming press, which are singing a much different tune with Dragon Age The Veilguard. And they don't at all want to acknowledge what they were saying with the Hogwarts Legacy situation, which really exposed many of these individuals for the hypocrites that they are. But Eric Kane, the games journalist that I just brought up, he actually had a very good take on this situation for Forbes. He said, Dragon Age The Veilguard's clumsy, preachy political messaging does more harm than good. He says, the best way to convince someone of your own point of view is generally not to bash them over the head with a cudgel, though that seems to be the preferred approach in modern political discourse and a loss in entertainment. The culture being what it is has lost all sense of subtlety. And far too many films, TV shows, and video games, we see a heavy-handed, top-down approach to the issues of the day. It's a real shame that the developers of BioWare decided to go this route. I've already posted my impressions about this game, which he actually enjoys a lot of. In my piece, I noted that so far at least, I hadn't encountered anything overtly preachy or that one might describe as garishly political or overly woke, and he says, but I had not yet arrived at a certain section of the game that has now been making the rounds on social media, being roundly and rightfully mocked. Unfortunately, the scene in question will play directly into the narrative that the game is woke, feeding a cycle of online online discourse that goes nowhere but earns lots of clicks, it will undoubtedly turn many gamers off entirely, not necessarily because they're unsympathetic to trans rights, but because they're tired of being preached at, which has been it's not just gaming I think you need to talk about, it is entertainment overall. And in terms of television and movies, there's been a lot more of that versus games, although recently up for debate. He goes on to say this is immersion breaking. Frankly, it's written so poorly that it comes off across as self-parody. The character's performative apology is shallow and empty, as all performative apologies are. In my experience, a simple and genuine sorry is better than making a big show of it and then bragging about how much better your apology is. The whole scene feels freshly cut from some conversation in undergrad gender studies class in the year of 2024 in California. The kind of conversation said undergrads will someday look back on and cringe over. And we actually saw even Elon Musk himself responding to this along with the libs of TikTok. Again, this has gone much wider than the gaming sphere. It's gone mainstream, in which there's lots of what Elon says here. What a travesty. But there are other clips that are very much like that last clip we just went over. This is an example of it, in which Tosh comes out as non-binary.
Here, vegetables.
Thank you.
So, I'm non-binary.
And you would think that in a game like this, there'd probably be a different term that's going to be used, but I guess not. I guess we couldn't make that in a dark fantasy game like this.
What does that mean?
It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
If this is because I have criticized your dress or your manners...
It isn't!
Under the Cune, the term for one whose gender does not match the one given to them at birth was a cunethlock. Perhaps you are like that.
Why do you have to keep picking at it? Why can't you just be happy for me?
Evatosh, Chakra Toebra.
So I'm supposed to struggle with who I am? Even if I don't feel like I fit, even if...
Again, this definitely just reads off as somebody's real-life experience, whoever the BioWare writer of this scene was, and they threw it into this game. And again, it just... no nuance, no care at all for any of this.
I feel wrong?
No, you misunderstood.
Then say it better! Why am I never enough for you?
I will go. Thank you for inviting me to your home. Panahedan.
And yeah, that's just another example of why BioWare should not have touched any of this stuff, especially when you don't have the talent for this type of writing, especially since that earlier talent is long gone. They're working on much different experiences now, they're all at different studios, and now we have this new age of BioWare writers in which we get 2024 put into a dark fantasy franchise like Dragon Age, which definitely, Mass Effect, my god, my expectations with the writing is pretty close to zero right now. But don't worry, because there are more scenes of this. Sophia Narowitz brings this up. Did BioWare have to give the trans character mommy issues and...
Around in fancy mage clothes.
Again, I just think that they completely ruined this Tosh character, and it's just abysmal how they put all this together.
Because I like them?
You're barely even wearing a shirt.
You fight Anton with a bare midriff.
Everything all right?
We're fine. Just trading fashion tips. So what I wear is a problem for you?
It's not. It's just... why dress like that? Are you trying to make your mother happy?
Tosh, what's going on? Something is clearly bothering you.
My bet's on mothers and dresses.
It's just something my mother said the other day. That I act more like a man than a woman.
And you feel like you should wear dresses to make her happy?
No. Can you imagine me in a dress? I'd look stupider than I...
Again, I'm just going to point out, we're going to move on past this clip, but I think this comment summarizes this. It says, why can't we get more characters like Parvati from The Outer Worlds, LGBT characters that aren't all about LGBT and actually have a personality outside of that? And that requires talent, something that it appears that whoever was writing this character does not have at all. And I said this before and I'll say it again, a lot of the BioWare talent that made the earlier Dragon Age and Mass Effect games what they are and why they're so beloved, they're long gone. One of those specific games that a lot of the talent like Drew Karpyshyn, who was one of those lead writers on some of those earlier BioWare experiences. They were at Archetype Entertainment, I think alongside James Olin, which was one of the lead designers of a lot of those past BioWare experiences. They're working on Exodus, which is a spiritual successor of sorts to Mass Effect, and that's why I am very much interested in seeing what Archetype Entertainment puts together, because they seemingly are like the old BioWare, and the new, you know, BioWare name only is just, it's a different studio. It isn't the same team that made those past beloved experiences. Like I said, the controversy, the outrage surrounding Dragon Age The Veilguard only continues on, and so far the game does look like it is doing alright in terms of performance. In terms of user review scores, we'll see if that changes or what exactly happens with that. I think it's going to turn more negatively, especially as players get deeper and deeper into the experience, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, are you playing Dragon Age The Veilguard right now? Are you planning to, or maybe not? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, but thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.